If you like the video, then please consider supporting Slope's Game Room on Patreon. Oh, it's time to go all Nintendo again, guys. And as usual, I need to start the video off by telling you that I'm a Sega kid, not a Nintendo kid, blah blah blah, right? Well, I've actually followed this series since the very beginning. The original game on the Game Boy Advance, WarioWare Inc. Mega Micro Games, or WarioWare Inc. Minigame Mania, or Made in Wario, there's a lot of that in this episode so best get used to it, was a game that I became pretty damn obsessed with. And with the recent release of WarioWare Gold, or Made in Wario Gorgeous, which is a bloody brilliant name by the way, literally being the greatest hits of the series, well, I think it's about time we finally gave this awesome series the awesome complete history sticker. A series of games I have literally never not enjoyed, a series of games that everybody enjoys, and a series of games that I personally remember reading about before it was released in whatever random magazine I was reading at the time, where it was described as mini games but only a few seconds long. What? That's bloody stupid. Mini games? I'll tell you now, that's not gonna work, am I right? Well, obviously it did, and obviously it was yet again another perfect example of Nintendo baffling the minds of all of those out there that read about this sort of stuff. I remember when I first saw pictures of this. What the hell, Nintendo? Mark my words, motion-controlled wands will never catch on. Oh dear. Yeah, you know what, Nintendo, I take it all back. Please, never stop being mental. Right, I think it's best we all just get on with it. It being the WarioWare series, arguably Nintendo's most popular stupid idea ever, that I am obviously a very big fan of. So, join me as we take a look at the ridiculous WarioWare franchise, where we'll be taking a look at its development, its rather unknown origins, the even more ridiculous characters, and of course, the games. Welcome to Slope's Game Room. If you was going to ask me what my favourite game in the series is, well, I'm going to have to say it's the Wii version, WarioWare Smooth Moves, or Dancing Made in Wario as it's known in Japan. It's the game I go back and play the most whenever I get a good group of people over. Well, that and Bishi Bashi Special. Easily the most stupid game I own and always such brilliant fun to play. But for single player mayhem, although I have a soft spot for that original, I can't deny that that newest gold version is probably the most rounded. But with this being the 5th game and this being the 9th, or the 8th, it depends if you see this as a proper WarioWare title or not. Regardless, we'll be getting to that one shortly, because for now, yeah, I think we're in fact getting a little ahead of ourselves. So, let's go back to the beginning. Nintendo's Research and Development 1, aka R&D 1, Nintendo's longest running team, responsible in part and sometimes completely for so many classic franchises that you see plastered all over every classic Nintendo fanboy's backpack to date. You got your Metroid, you got your Tetris, Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, and so many more. One of the key roles towards the end of the 80s for the team was to create some of the Game Boy's most popular games, which obviously include both Super Mario Land and, of course, Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins. And for any gamer out there that's worth his weight in garlic will tell you that this was the very first appearance of Wario. I'm sorry guys, every time I see that name Wario, my mind reads it like this. Wario! Wario is a bloody awesome character, the dirty, grotesque, rude, smelly and perfectly disgusting character that you can't help but love. I personally remember seeing adverts like the ones you're seeing on the screen here as a kid and thinking to myself, you know what, having a Game Boy wouldn't actually be a bad idea. Obviously this didn't happen for many years, but starting from this very advert in this very house where I grew up, look, that's my old bedroom, I couldn't help but feel incredibly drawn to this obese ball of stench. And that obviously rippled across the globe as Wario managed to nab himself more solo games than Mario's own brother. You know, Luigi Mario. Sure, these games are easy, but the gameplay and the charm that oozes out of these things make them an absolute must for all gamers, great and small. So whilst Nintendo was pumping out these more edgier, dare I say it, anti-Mario games over here, they were still experimenting with new styles of gameplay over here on the more popular SNES. Yep, R&D1 and Intelligent Systems ended up releasing something rather special, and that game was Mario Paint. A game that nowadays is a bit confusing, but for the time, even as a Sega kid like me, you couldn't help but feel the urge to want to draw things on a TV with a mouse on a console. Look guys, you're really just gonna have to trust me on this one. For the time, this was revolutionary. Now, to beef up what is essentially MS Paint on a cartridge, there is actually quite a bit more to do. There's the ever so popular music generator, which still gets some amazing use to this very day. You can even crudely animate the pictures drawn to the music. And more importantly for this episode, you can swat flies. Yes, fly swatting the game. Obviously with the mouse is something that was a lot more fun than you would ever expect. The minigame mentality carried on in the game's sequel to Mario Paint BS Edition. No. It stands for Broadcast Service, you cheeky sods. And it happened yet again in the Nintendo 64 DD game, Mario Artist Polygon Studio. Now the big difference here is not only the ability to actually design 3D objects and play with them, eat your heart out Spore, but also it's those mini-games. These are not exactly mini-games, they're micro-games, and as you may have guessed, this is where the inspiration for WarioWare came from. There are 8 games in total compared to the hundreds found in the later series, but when looking at those 8 games you can see the inspiration is strong with this one. Jump is Crazy Cars, Block is Diamond Dig, Shoot is Repellion, Roulette is Wario World, Baseball is Batter Up, Flies is Mario Paint Fly Swatter, obviously, Race is Hectic Highway and Racing 112, and Maze is Maze Days. These sound bomber stages in the Mario Artist game were obviously the starting point to the games you're all here to see. And this small group here obviously had a lot of fun working on these micro games. And after Mario Artist was out, Yoshi Sakamoto, Goro Abe, Ko Takachi, and Ryoshi Nakata of Nintendo R&D1, as well as Taku Sugioka and Noko Mori from Intelligent Systems, took it upon themselves to continue making the game in secret. There was something hidden within the depths of these 8 tiny games that hooked the team, so they decided to jot down plenty of ideas on post-it notes and continue on. However, this stupidly brilliant idea grabbed the attention of other workers too, and in a desperate attempt to get their tiny games included into the WarioWare roster, extra post-it notes managed to make their way into the team's vicinity. The crazier the game got, the better it got, and although not every game made its way into the final product due to some just being too obscure, they finally had enough to show the top dogs at Nintendo what they have been working on. But before doing so, they of course added Wario to the mix. Why? Well, it's obvious, right? In an interview with that WarioWare All-Star team from the amazing Kikizu archives, Yoshi Sakamoto explains.
We got the idea of using Wario and the other characters because we couldn't think of anyone else who would be best for the role. Wario is always doing stupid things and is really idiotic, so we thought him and the rest of the characters would be best for the game.
With the work in progress in hand, the powers that be was shown, and according to that same interview,
he didn't seem surprised, he just said, okay.
The rest of the development came pretty naturally, albeit a bit chaotically. Like I said, the constant attempt to get your game added was being slapped in front of the crew, and a sort of mini unspoken competition was put into the minds of those developers to try their best to make the absolute weirdest micro game they possibly could. Rarely this meant that a game would become slightly too complicated for a game that's only a few seconds long, but all in all, the aim was to eliminate those, and the eventual 300 games that were designed got knocked down to a respectable 213.
Game Boy Advance. ボタン一つで勝負が決まる瞬間アクションゲームメイドインワリオ。ゲームボーイアドバンス。あ、できた。クリアした。うまいかもしれないって。テンション上がってきた。ボタン一つで勝負が決まる瞬間アクションゲームメイドインワリオ。ゲームボーイアドバンス。あ、これいいの？いいのゲーム。やけ！やけじゃないよ。やってんだよ。何考えてんだよ。ボタン一つで勝負が決まる瞬間アクションゲームメイドインワリオ。
By this point in the complete history, you know what you're going to be getting. Plenty of minigames spread across Wario and his several new friends, which you need to play incredibly quickly and adapt to in order to get the highest score possible. Most of them are as simple as literally tapping a button, or even moving the D-pad ever so slightly, and very rarely do you need to do both. It sounds simple, and it is, but when you only get a couple of seconds, possibly two in the earlier stages to work that out, well, that is where the challenge lies. After completing a set number of randomly ordered micro games, you then move on to a sort of boss. These tend to be slightly longer and do require a little bit of trial and error the first time round, and if you fail, you lose one of your 4 lives and you need to try and do those micro games again before you challenge the boss stage again. Once you defeat that level, you can move on to another character and do it all again with a fresh 25 micro games added to the mix. It's honestly not that hard of a game. I suppose that's similar to all of the Wario games in that respect. But it's not about difficulty. It's all about the endurance of doing as much as you can for as long as you can to basically get the highest score possible. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is really it. It's a formula that they nailed from the beginning, and it's a formula that they continued with for the majority of the series. On top of all those crazy micro games, you actually have plenty of mini games found hidden within the game that you unlock by simply playing the games. Just like the game itself, they sounded stupidly dull, but when you play them, you will question how you ever lived without a paper-plane game in your library up to this point. WarioWare Inc. is a game that has fully stood the test of time, and although another 8 games have come out after it, the simplistic nature of that first game is what draws people in over the eventual sequels. The more you play, the harder the game gets and the faster it gets, bringing your saggy behind closer and closer to the edge of your chair until you can't hold on anymore and you gotta hit that retry button. When the game was finally finished and getting ready for release, Shigsy and the rest of the marketing crew at Nintendo wasn't exactly sure on how to market such a new style of game. I suppose that the worry was similar to what I thought, 3-second micro games. That sounds a little bit ridiculous, but Miyamoto-san decided to go with that idea anyway, and looking at the Japanese box art, the slogan, more, shorter and faster, was so in your face it even overpowered the title itself. But as you would expect, the team still wasn't exactly expecting big numbers for such a quirky game. Those expectations, however, flew out the window when that game hit the store shelves. It was a critical and commercial success, and as soon as Nintendo realised what they had, President of Nintendo, one Satoru Iwata, instructed that a sort of remake needed to be made for the GameCube.
最速5秒でできるプチゲームがこれでもかと詰め込まれたお手軽瞬間アクションゲームメイドインワリオ。今度はゲームキューブでみんなで挑戦だ。集まれメイドインワリオ。集まれドクターの言う通りにプレイした。歩き回って邪魔しちゃえ。ああ風船が割れちゃう。その他大爆笑の面白モード満載。友達呼んで大騒ぎ。誰よりも熱く盛り上がれ。任天堂ゲームキューブ集まれメイドインワリオ。
And this game was developed in only 6 months. If you're like me and you don't have any friends, it's not worth getting because it's essentially the same game with a few of the single player modes taken out and replaced with multiplayer stages. Only joking. This is a budget title and it's well worth getting. Loads of fun that doesn't really need reviewing because if you're like this and you've actually managed to remortgage your house to get 4 of these, then you're in for a great night. It was at this point that Nintendo knew what they had on both the WarioWare games, which are essentially the same game. Cheap games to make that was selling really well and more importantly was something really fresh. So shortly after, 2 more games were put into development. WarioWare Touched and WarioWare Twisted. So firstly, WarioWare Twisted, simply because that one was in development first. After the success of the first game, not only did a sort of enhanced port get made on the GameCube, but an obvious sequel was a bit of a no-brainer. However, in true Nintendo fashion, a standard sequel isn't exactly Nintendo's game. They wanted to do something new, and after creating several new micro games which were obviously fun, they sadly didn't bring anything new to the table. They found themselves pretty stuck, and it was during this stumped development that the team was showcased this gorgeous beast. The Nintendo DS. Finally, the team had their new gimmick, so half the crew went and worked on a game for that system, whilst the other half, mostly consisting of intelligent systems staff, got speaking to Kazuyoshi Asara about this new gyro prototype that was so small it could easily fit into a small Game Boy Advance cartridge. They loved the idea of motion-controlled microgames so much so that they made a few of them, showed it off to Mr. Iwata, and it turns out that he loved it too. Especially the record player micro game that would spin the same speed as you spinning the Game Boy, which he did by putting the system on a chair and twisting it around whilst casually saying to himself,
"This is ridiculous."
Yes, it was. But it's what gave the game its obvious gimmicky charm. And don't let that put you off. It's fine when a game like this is full of gimmicks, and video game developers know it. Make the gimmicky game stupidly fun, as well as simply stupid, and you're onto a winner. As expected, the game was very well received, even getting a #1 game of all time on the Game Boy Advance from IGN, and 9.5s pretty much everywhere else.
Twisted microgames. You turn it, it turns you. It's Twisted. WarioWare Twisted. Only for Game Boy Advance. Literally for everyone.
Like I said, whilst this game was being made for the Game Boy Advance, there was another game being made on the Nintendo DS. And that game was obviously WarioWare Touched.
Touch and play over 180 quick-fire microgames. WarioWare Touched for Nintendo DS. Rated E for everyone.
That was a bit creepy, wasn't it? Anyway, WarioWare Touched, boy did I play this game a lot. Another awesome game yet again, which is pretty much the same, yet again. But this time you use the stylus to do stupid things for 3 seconds. By this point, does it really need explaining? It's the same game, but in a slightly different way. Yet again, the game took a very short amount of time to make, about 5 months in case you was wondering. And yet again, it sold very well. The big question is, what next? You got the original, you got the multiplayer game, you got the gyro-censored game, and you've now got the touchscreen game too. Well, thankfully Nintendo never stopped the old innovation train, and when both Yoshio Sakamoto and Guru Abe saw what station was coming up next, it was pretty obvious to all that the ridiculousness was about to go up probably more now than any other game in the series.
Shake it, baby, shake it. Go on. Saute. Yeah, saute. Look at it.
Pop it. Pop it. Pop, 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 pop.
WarioWare. Smooth moves. Only on Wii.
We would like to play.
WarioWare Smooth Moves, only for Wii. Rated everyone 10 and up.
It's a Wii Wario!
Now, holding the controller like this just simply wasn't going to cut it, so they decided to make you use the controller in a variety of very obscure ways. The end product is not only one of the best-selling games for the Wii during the month of its release, but also a game that is probably the best drinking game ever made for the system. Seriously, you know me, I'm not a fan of the old alcohol encouragement, but go and get yourself a crate of the old Complete History beer, and you'll be in for a bloody awesome night. If you've not played Smooth Moves and you own a Wii, and let's face it, everyone does own a Wii, then do yourself a favour and go and pick it up. And what's better? It's pretty cheap. Right, next up is Atsusu Made in Wario, or WarioWare Snapped, a DSi only game that obviously also has its very own gimmick too, a camera. As seen here by Mr. Iwata, it pretty much did what it needed to do. I personally didn't play the game until I got the 3DS version downloaded, and in all honesty, this gimmick simply doesn't work well enough to keep up with the frantic fast pace that is WarioWare. You see how this guy is struggling to copy the actions on the screen to simply just start one of the micro games? Yeah, it's been pretty perfect up to this point, Nintendo, but this one really did let you down in my opinion. Sorry. The reviews for the game at the time are not exactly bad, but seriously guys, even with the broken camera aside, I still think the game is missing so much of the charm found in the earlier games. Thankfully for those that really wanted more at this point, well, you didn't have to wait too long, because WarioWare DIY, it's probably for you. The way I look at the game is simple. Imagine if WarioWare and Mario Paint had a passionate night in and birthed out this DIY project. Please, leave the fan art away from this channel, thank you very much, DeviantArt fans. So, anyway. Just as the box suggests, this is the Mario Maker version of the series. Yeah, you've got a few levels designed by the developers, but all the toys and the obvious creation of those micro games is the real heart of what's going on here. Because of this, you could argue that this is not really a proper WarioWare game. But let's be honest, you knew what you was going to be getting into when you bought it. If you give it the time and decide to learn the rather impressive tutorial stages all about sprite swapping and actions, then you're probably going to have a really good amount of time injecting all the fun and crazy things that are going on in your mind with the crazy things that are going on in the developer's mind. But for me, yes, I did have quite a bit of fun with it, but I haven't really got the time for a game like this. It's a tad more niche this time round, and if creation is your cup of tea, then go ahead and get this bad boy. It's surprisingly well done. Just take note, you can no longer share or play your buddy's creations online anymore.
I don't know how my little brother does it. I mean, how does he come up with this stuff? These WarioWare DIY microgames he put together are great. Fun, challenging, creative. I mean, he's in the other room right now making some more. For some reason, our mom won't let him play WarioWare DIY at home anymore. I'm not really sure why.
You've got the inspiration, now make the games. Choose or design the graphics, music, and gameplay. Then play and trade your WarioWare-style microgame creations with your friends. Plus, with WarioWare DIY Showcase, you can take your games to the big screen with your Wii console. WarioWare DIY, only from Nintendo, and only for these Nintendo systems.
Right, we are seriously getting on with these now, aren't we? So, I think it's about time we take a sharp left with the spiritual successor to the series, released on the awesome Nintendo Wii U. Originally, the game started off as Guru Abe was tasked to create a game that would actually be included inside the Wii U itself. And because not every owner would own one of those old school Wiimotes, they decided to focus all of the games entirely on the gamepad. And although it may have started off as a typical WarioWare game, it most definitely did not end up like one. The more the team played with that awesome gamepad, the more they wanted to do with it. Unlike the hundreds of games found on other entries in the series, this game only holds 16 games. But it's 16 games that not only play completely different from one another, but also they're a lot beefier and can be played multiple times in a row without getting repetitive or annoying, for the most part.
Wario and friends are back, but not as you know them. Game & Wario uses the Wii U gamepad in new and wacky ways. You can ski, catch thieves on camera, and you can even launch Franks! Enjoy 16 completely outrageous games with your friends and family using only the gamepad. Game & Wario, only on Wii U.
Each of the 16 games' title screens were designed after the childlike wonder you would achieve after getting a brand new game as a kid and staring at the box art, and Sakamoto-san often found himself asking the artist to make it even more lavish, and the same goes for the games too. The final product is a game that obviously didn't come out as a pack-in, but instead a budget Wii U title. And it shows. Game & Wario is without a doubt the lowest scored game in the series, but a lot of that is based around the fact that there isn't really a lot to do in the game. And honestly, that's fair. But out of those 16 mini-games that are all pretty much damn fun to play, especially the multiplayer ones, what you've got here is a really good package of mini-games. My two personal favourites are the slowly walking around the screen stealing fruit in a crowd whilst your friends try to work out which one of these guys is you before trying to pick you out in a lineup, and possibly best of all is this weird catapult one where you shoot Franks from your controller onto little islands in an attempt to get the best score. You can change up what the island scores are, and you can knock off other players if you're good enough. And honestly, I haven't had this much fun with local co-op since the days of Monkey Ball on the GameCube. And don't worry, there's a typical WarioWare game found in this package, although it only consists of 22 microgames, and this time the gimmick is to not only play them for as long as you can, but it's also to keep an eye on the telly so your mum doesn't catch you playing your Game Boy instead of going to sleep. It's a simple change up that I probably wouldn't choose too often, but I am glad it exists because it's a nice little mix up. In summary, it's a pretty awesome game, but it's just a shame that it's probably about a third of the size that it should be. Plus, more micro games wouldn't have hurt in my opinion. So yeah, there you go. 8 games down, and finally only one more to go. WarioWare Gold, the sort of revamped, cleaner, greatest hits version of this series that shows us that this is probably going to be the final true WarioWare game to exist. That is unless Nintendo really mix up what their next system can actually do. And let's all hope that they do that. So WarioWare Gold, it's great, obviously. By this point you guys know I like this style of game, and therefore it's pretty obvious that I'm going to enjoy the best of version of the WarioWare series. Not much is different here apart from the slight graphical upgrade. The game is yet again very easy to complete, and the cleaner art style found within. Personally, I prefer the harder shaded and grittier look found before it, but honestly, that really is nitpicking, because if this is the final WarioWare game that we get, well, they went out with a bang. This obscure series of games has never been topped. And although plenty have come along to try and replicate this magic formula, primarily in the mobile arena, none of them can do it like Nintendo. And that's not just because of the overly quirky characters found within, although that does help, but in my opinion it's all down to Nintendo's weird ways. It doesn't matter what sort of gamer you are, if you hate motion controls, if you hate wands, if you hate camera games, or even touchscreen games, it doesn't matter. WarioWare will always be the exception. Nintendo's perfect way of showing off just how crazy, yet brilliant, they truly are. Hey there guys, thanks for checking out the video. I want to give a big special shout out to all of my Patreons, but first I want to give a big special shout out to the couple of tiny collaborations I had in this video. Firstly, a big shout out to On a Retro Tip, a very good channel, which I suggest you all check out. And of course, TopHat's sidekick, TopHat Street. You can go and check him out over on Twitch. Again, the link will be in the description. But for now, I want to give a big special shout out to all of the Patreons, but first a big special shout out goes to Ryan Burford, Gary Pinkett, Andrew Dalton, Tomek Grabowski, Christopher Turnbull, Aaron McNamara, Brent Craft, Ben Jackson, Joe Lazares, Ian A. Chapman, Phil Lowlands, Genovi, Video Game Basement, Hananaz, Retro to Next Gen, Pixels.Limited, aka Samuel Victor, Red the Beard, John Fuller, Michael, Conrad Constantine, Pretendo64, Mike Fallon, Gavin Gorvez, Creamy Elephant, James Loveridge, Casey Garner, Blitz, Hedgie Ben Hall, Brian Warson, Generate Mr. T-Shirts, Nick Pollard, Bram Perez, Garrett Leisure, Marcus King Emo Cut Tyndall, June, Rob Jenkins, The Geeky Dad, Richard Carter, aka Fantastic Dizzy, Todd Paul Float G, and Petty Mew. If you want to get your name shouted out, get your name shown, come and see what I'm working on, all of that usual stuff, then please click the link that you see on the screen. Don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, a thumbs down, whatever you prefer, and of course be sure to come and check us out over on Discord. The link again will be in the description. But for now, this is DJ Slope signing out, and hopefully I'll see you all next time.